Hello and welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'm also the managing director at Alcott Global, responsible for executive search and consulting business in North America and Asia Pacific. Today, we have Alexandre Eboli, the executive vice president and chief supply chain officer for Conagra Brands. He has end-to-end supply chain responsibility for the company, overseeing manufacturing, procurement, EHS, plant quality, logistics, transportation, and warehousing. If I have to define Conagra by numbers, they are, 105 years old business with 42 manufacturing plants with employee strength approximately closing to 20,000, with revenue approximating to $12.5 billion. Alexandre, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Roche, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure talking to you and everyone that is listening to this podcast.
By the way, this is our second time speaking. When we spoke for the first time, I directly asked you out, hey, can you join this podcast? And you said, yes, I'm glad that we are finally doing it. By the way, I also missed out stating that you're also now the non-executive board member with Ardent Mills, which is a independent JV between Cargill and Conagra, which is quite unique. I almost thought Cargill and Conagra kind of competes in most places. So it's good to see that you have a JV together.
Actually, we don't compete. We are good partners in Ardent Mills. Cargill is a good partner as a supplier of ours as well. So, and Ardent Mills has been quite successful. It's a great company serving the food industry very successfully and with a very nice plan.
Amazing. So now, keeping Conagra supply chain behind, I would love to kind of understand your history, your personal history from, journey from where you started and, how did you end up becoming a chief supply chain officer here?
I'm engineering by education, and I started my career back in Brazil many, many winters ago. And directly out of college, I was recruited by Unilever in what they call the trainee program, which gives young people getting out of college the ability to learn business. It's a 3-year program that we are able to rotate. And I started there. I was very blessed over the years to have people that invested in me, that allowed me to learn, making my mistakes, learning from them and grow. They gave me the opportunity to rotate between functions in supply chain, even outside of supply chain for a while in finance, different countries, different cultures. And I made my way through Unilever, learning that, to the point that I decided to make a move and come to Conagra, which has been also a great experience. So learning, I would say that the number one thing through my journey, my career that brought me here was all about learning and helping others develop and grow and achieve their potential, being willing to listen, and being blessed by so many people that invested time in my development.
That's awesome. Because what I want to do is I quickly want to share our audience the amount of roles you have done with Unilever and how much you have grown. And because I personally found it really interesting because you joined in Brazil as a management trainee, then moved into planning, so as a planning manager, then distribution and customer service project manager, then logistics manager, then promoted to Latin America category planning manager. You moved to marketing, you were marketing accountant, then financial controller. Then you came back to supply chain, which was planning director for, skincare in Latin America, then planning director again. I think that was in US. Then you became a supply chain planning director, vice president, supply chain capabilities America, vice president, logistics America, Vice President Supply Chain Refreshments Latin America, Vice President of Supply Chain Latin America, Vice President of Supply Chain USA, and Head of Supply Chain North America. This is just 25 years in Unilever before you move to Conagra. Now, this is phenomenal. This is phenomenal opportunities you have taken, the risk you have taken. And why supply chain? So why did you come back to supply chain after moving to finance?
That's a very good question. I learned a lot in finance. Let me start by saying that it allowed me to see the business through different lenses, understanding deeply the P&L, understanding the choices that we have to make, and more importantly, understanding the role of supply chain in creating the fuel for the business to invest in the other lines and make the business grow. But after that period of time that I learned a lot, my passion is in execution. My passion is about connecting to operations, being able to understand business needs and transform into supply chain solutions, working with the team to transform into supply chain solutions and understanding supply chain capabilities and offering back opportunities to the business. That's what I like doing, understanding what is needed and working on finding solutions. And I could do that in supply chain. You mentioned the different lanes that I was able to run in planning, logistics, customer service, manufacturing. Each one of them builds belief of supply chain integration or being able to not being siloed and then looking through problems that can connect with different perspectives. And that's what I like about supply chain. And that's what I've tried to be doing. Actually, as I went through this journey, I built 5 things that I believe are core for a supply chain to be successful. There are many ways to deliver success in supply chain, I believe. But the way I believe and we try to run here at Conagra is based on 5 principles. If you allow me, I will go through each one of them.
Yes, please.
So the first one is that supply chain is not an entity in isolation. Supply chain has to be connected to the business. By being connected to the business, I mean, we have to understand what are our brand propositions. We have to understand what are our customer strategies so we can serve them. So being completely integrated to the business, close to the day-to-day of what is needed in terms of market dynamics, consumer understanding, allow us to be a better supply chain. The second one is that we as supply chain have to operate as one big team. It doesn't matter if you have the best procurement in the world. If you cannot have the best logistics, that balance doesn't work. We have to think end to end. We have to think in a way that everyone understands each other's perspective and we find a common optimum that moves and delivers value to the business. So the second one is that end to end from farm to shelf is the place that I believe we add most value. The third one is that in supply chain, execution is probably more important than strategy. The way I like to say is that we have to be operational intense. Every single day, you have to be close, understanding the part of the supply chain that you run. You have to go to the details of it. You have to understand precisely what happened in every single part of it so that we can continue to optimize. You have to have the ambition to find problems and not to avoid them. You have to go towards the problems instead of running from them. And then you have to leverage technology to do that as frequent, as fast as possible. So the third pillar that we have here in our core system in Conagra is about operationally intense, digitally driven. The fourth one is very easy for you to think about supply chain as everyone that wears the same badge that you wear, meaning supply chain at Conagra is not people that work at Conagra. Our suppliers are part of our supply chain. The companies that provide us technology are part of our supply chain. Our customers are part of our supply chain. So being open to invite criticism, to invite suggestions, to co-innovate with them, receive any inputs that you can get from experts that know better than we do on their part of the supply chain, make us richer, make us better. So our fourth one I call the orchestration of specialists. We have to have the ability to orchestrate all that knowledge that's out there, invite it in, absorb and transform into value to consumers. And the last one is about diversity and inclusion. As you mentioned, we lead more than 15,000 people only at Conagra. If you expand it to the families that are connected to those individuals, plus the families on the supplier base that depend on us, it's a huge community that we lead. And we are responsible for it. So the better we understand them, the better we look like them, the more we live like them, the better we'll serve them. So the fifth one is about diversity and inclusion, allowing everyone to be themselves as they run. So the 5 principles that I learned through the journey and we try to apply every day here is fully connected to the business, integrated end-to-end, digitally driven but operationally intense, orchestration of specialists and diversity and inclusion. These are the 5 things that I believe through the journey, the different countries, the different companies allowed me to learn as we went through and we try to apply it here.
That's amazing. Many companies are going through the process integration and there are very few companies in the world which have been really successful. Either they have thought, okay, we are doing an integrated business planning. Technically, they think it's an integration, but they're not successful. And when they do process integration, they're not successful because it's technologically not supported. How are you in this journey? How far have you reached in, I forgot how many years it's been since you've been in Conagra? It's second year
2 years. 2 years.
2 years, yeah. And how is the journey so far?
I think that you are absolutely spot on. One thing cannot move without the other. And let me talk a little bit about technology here. I honestly believe that today we have so much available at our disposal that the question is not, do we have the technology or is the technology good enough? The challenge is what you just said. Do we have the capabilities to use the technology to generate insights? And more importantly, from those insights, transform into actions that drive value. That part of collecting the insights and driving value through different actions is the challenge that I believe will make the difference and will differentiate us, the successful ones, to the non-successful ones. The trap that sometimes I see happening, and we try to avoid it here, is that the technology application on multiple pilots, all of them is small in scale and not with the potential to full rollout and full value creation. So what we try to do here is a very disciplined approach of 5 layers of technology that starts from the basic ERP, the sanity and the cleansing of the ERP, then go into all those multiple softwares that are specialized in the different parts of the supply chain, all connecting to a data lake. From the data lake, then having the insights and intelligence layer that basically extracts and generates the insights. And then the last one, some AI application that you can then start even automating and creating solutions based on those insights. Our focus has been in making sure that from procurement to deliver, we evolve on those 5 layers in a very consistent way, focusing less on the technology and more in the application. And the application comes with the need for change management, for people to actually apply and understand how the value comes. And when we do that successfully, we see results very fast. I can give you one example that we call the Connected Shop Floor program that we have here at Conagra, that is basically taking these sites and digitizing the ways of working, the management, the daily routines, the setup of the machines, which is kind of very basic. And I know that people that are listening here will say, oh, we have that for 10 years now. Probably, and that's great. Here we are in the process of seeing then the shop floor absorbing it, not only having access to the technology, but using it. And by using it, we see in a quarter step change in efficiencies across the site and not in some pilots here and there.
That's amazing. And when you joined, was that the kind of key KPIs for you to really digitize it? Or is it the kind of the cultural changes or creating the supply chain at more mature and evolving it more maturely? What was the kind of key KPI when you joined?
So if you go back to 2 years ago, we were in the middle of the pandemic. So 2 years ago, we defined our strategic program with 2 very clear objectives. The first one was delivering today, meaning supply chain of the day, we are very simple. We have to deliver only 5 things. We have to make sure that our people go back to home safe. Number 2, we have to make sure that the products that we are delivering are at the quality standards expected by consumers or better. The third one is that we have to deliver case fill on time to our customers and on shelf availability. The fourth one, we have to manage costs so that we deliver the profitability that our shareholders expect and the business needs to reinvestment. Then we have to manage cash through working capital. So the delivering today is focused on the execution on 5 KPIs in that order, by the way: safety, quality, service, cost, and cash. That was the today. And we focus, I would say, during the pandemic, 99% of the time there, while we have a small group of people thinking then on the second part, which was the future. And the future was about modernizing the supply chain, meaning not only the assets per se, bringing automation in, we are implementing a lot of new warehouses fully automated that are much better in terms of connecting to the requirements of our customers on performance in general. On our factories, also a lot of machine automation, I would say, work automation, but then also the digitization of it, how we transform the way we manage the day-to-day, how we leverage all the data that is available, creating more insights and driving more action.
I mean, because you have quite a big scope, can you kind of pinpoint one challenge, which is one of the biggest challenges you are trying to face? And I would love to kind of understand your principal process on identifying the challenge, solving it. Because, of course, I understood that that's your ways. If you see a problem, go fight with it. So I would love to kind of understand what the challenge is and how do you actually fight with it?
At college, I studied Naval Engineering. So my graduation project was to design a big boat. And one of the things that you learn then is that for every boat, you actually have big waves, but then you have some small waves in the short term. I think that it's quite easy for you to be distracted with those small waves that you see every day, an issue in a bottle blowing machine here and a material there. I think that the big wave is the one that matters. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have a big wave that was formed and we are still living through it, that went through the demand spike to the supply disruption, to the buildup of inventories across the industry, to then now to the stabilization of the system. I would say that as we surfed that big wave, the big topic across it was to maintain sustainable and reliable the operation. Starting in the first year or months of the pandemic, where we knew very limited about the virus, and we had a social responsibility almost to keep making sure that in an industry like consumer goods, everyone was expecting to continue to eat. Everyone was expecting to go to the shelves and find hand sanitizers or their toilet soaps or whatever it was. We as an industry, it's not a company or another, we as an industry had to step up and making sure that while we kept our people safe, and I think that we all did a good job learning and applying all potential measures to protect our people, but is still maintaining our consumers' access to the products that they needed to live their lives in a very different environment, staying at home and all that. So as we went through that, we then started to learn all the different challenges associated with the bullwhip effect that is known for 100 years. But we have never lived that dimension that we saw the entire industry at the same time running out of finished goods stocks, everyone running to the same suppliers to replenish materials, and then the limitations of labor availability and transportation and ports. So we had a supply crash, I would say, that we had to adapt to continue to run operations. And as we went through that, then connecting to the business, understanding the possible trade-offs and how to still maintain was the second biggest challenge that we had. And finally, when we thought it was over, we got Omicron, that then it was probably even worse in terms of labor availability. While everyone was expecting things to recover, we had to step back and start again. So as we went through all this big wave, the way I see we are now, we are in the path of stabilization. I think I will speak for Conagra, we have had the commitment as a company to invest in our stocks. We were able to rebuild stocks to a very healthy way that allow us today to survive, to go through variations in demand in one end, but also small disruptions in supply that we are no longer exposed to that as we were for lack of safe stock in the past. So today we see stabilization in both ends, which allow us now to continue to progress on customer service, which we are already back to pre-pandemic levels, and we want to be even better. While at the same time now starting to release back that cash that has been invested into stocks, release it back so then we can serve better with less. And I think that we are at the moment right now, I think this is the big wave. There are multiple small waves in between, but this is the big wave that I see that we are now going through. And I see that started, I would say, a quarter ago or 2 quarters ago, we started to see this stabilization and our ability to serve even better our business.
Like the start of the year was quite turbulent, I would say, for many of the CPG companies. And I think last quarter, we started seeing retailers having better profit. I mean, they started showing signs from, 2%, 3%, 4%. And, the highest, I think, a retailer has shown is probably 4-point-some%. But if I take a step back to the basically more food companies, their profit difference for quarter to quarter is just less than 1%. I mean, again, I don't want to, of course, discuss what the next quarter is going to look like, but I would love to kind of understand where the landscape is going for the CPG companies now. I mean, I think many of the food companies have already been very pragmatic. There are no fancy spendings, but do you see it's getting improving, or it's the hustle is still going to go until end of the year?
Yeah, I will not comment on areas beyond supply chain. What I can tell you is that, as I mentioned, that big wave that I mentioned, there was a lot of costs associated with that. Not only the inflation that everyone saw, but also the investments made. I just mentioned about the amount of stock that we built. That it comes with us with a cost that we cannot price for. So this entire cost, if you see overall margins, they have gone down and some started to come back. That's a result of that stabilization. I think that we in supply chain, we just have to leave. I think that more and more it's being demonstrated that supply chain has to be focused on agility. The macro cycles that we live, either expansion of demand or contraction of demand or volatility in the short term or change in consumer behavior in the longer term, all of them require us to be connected to that understanding as fast as possible and then being agile to respond to it. And we've been investing into that, not only into tools in demand forecasting, which I think that they are good, but they have a limitation inherent to any forecasting tool. Even the most sophisticated ones still only forecast that will be wrong anyways. But more importantly is how can we react to it? How can we make our lead times shorter? How can we make our cycles shorter? So, I will quote a former boss here that I hope that he listens to that so he can see that I learned something from him, is that in the ideal world, we make tomorrow with what we sold today. And if you are able to move into that direction every quarter, really whatever is going to happen outside, we in supply chain, we will be able to react and be the best we can into that. So I think that that's what we are trying to do.
Very well said, really well said. We'll talk about Conagra a little bit more. So there was a commitment, and it's quite a big news, I think, where Conagra kind of said around, they're going to do $1 billion saving. I want to understand how much of supply chain has raised their hands and said, hey, this percentage of this amount is going to be taken care of by you. And how are you doing it?
Yeah. So that 1 billion is the supply chain commitment to the financial algorithm of Conagra. So that 1 billion is entirely coming from supply chain. Obviously, we will not deliver that alone. We need help from the business in helping us design products. We need R&D supporting us in the way we approve and run it. But that billion is on our cost line, and we are well positioned. Year one is behind us, and we delivered a third of that as expected. We expect to deliver that in 3 years. We are increasing our total productivity from 3 to 4% of our COGS, and that's the commitment we have made. And this is an holistic program. We call it Fuel for Growth. Basically includes from materials to manufacturing to design the network, all the investments that we are doing in technology to run, the logistics optimization, and all that. But you have to think that, and I keep saying that, the 1 billion in cost is just part of the value that we are creating. If you think about the three biggest value drivers that we have in supply chain, is starting with growth, meaning we were low 70s in service levels a year and a half ago, serving above 96, 97, 98%. There is 20% or more of service level improvement that certainly drive growth. And there are multiple ways of doing the math there. I will not go there, but there is huge value in continuing to serve better and better our consumers, and more importantly, being on shelf. Numbers of on-shelf availability above 95, 96, 98 and a half, as we have in some customers, certainly means that consumers get there. If they don't find our competitor, they will pick ours, and that drives growth.
Of course.
The second is cost, and the third one is cash. If you take 5-10 days out of the system, that cash being reinvested, and it's a big one. So that 1 billion in cost is, I think we will deliver that. I'm convinced that we will deliver that. We have the plans to do so. But in addition to that, we are creating value in these other fronts, both in cash and growth through our execution power.
Amazing. How much of, and I think one of the questions I shared is the supply chain sustainability challenges. There's already now higher pressure from boards on really, look at scope level 3, and when there's a cost cutting or rapid cost out programs going on within the business, how do you make sure that you are doing the right thing and sustainability is not taking the back seat? How do you kind of go and talk to companies and, stakeholders that, hey, this is what has to be done?
Rashid, you didn't say that, but I'll tell you what I listened. What I listen is that there is an implication that doing what's right for sustainability may not be good for the P&L. You didn't say it, but that's what I listened.
Yeah.
And I challenge that logic. What we do here in Conagra, and our mantra here is right for the business, right for the planet, means that if we have a solution in sustainability that is not good for the P&L, the solution is not good enough. We have to go back and find one that is good for the P&L also. So I don't see us stepping back from our commitments. We may have more challenges one place than another. Most of the commitments were made pre-pandemic. The portfolio changed since then. The technology changed since then. So we continue to reassess our commitment. In some places, we commit for more because we can do more. In some parts, we may have to adjust some of the timing because the technical solution is not still available. But our work is to make sure that every single one of the sustainability programs that we have, they not only help the sustainability agenda, but they are also positive for the business. And I can say that we have five commitments, public commitments, and we have some internal ones, but both in terms of CO2, plastics, sustainable sourcing, waste management, and water management, all of them, we continue to drive in a way that continues to deliver both our sustainability agenda as well as our financial algorithm. And I think that the sustainability of these programs and the ability to continue to push for more is because we do both of them simultaneously. Consumers are not willing to pay more for what we are not do that there could be potentially not optimal technical solutions, and it's our challenge in supply chain to invest and find those solutions that deliver both.
I should tell you that I use one product from Conagra a lot. It's a product from Ardent Mills. I'm vegan and they have plant-based products. So I've seen the packaging change. They were same initially. I think it was almost like a Tetra Pak plastic. Inside it was almost like the aluminum foil thing, and now it's not plastic. It's almost like a cardboard kind of material. Still some kind of poly, and then inside it. So I have already seen the products getting changed, the ink changing, instead of being more colorful, now it's, more, I think, green and white and something. So I started noticing those things.
No, so first of all, thanks for using Gardein. Not only the entire line of Gardein is a great quality products, but also we use Gardein products in some of our frozen meals in the different brands that we also have. So I suggest that you taste them. They are really great. But then going back to the packaging part that you mentioned, more than 93% of our packaging is already either recyclable, reusable, or compostable. I think that we lead the industry in that regard. We develop it with some of our supplier fiber-based bowls, which are unique and great in terms of sustainability. And that's a good example of the things that we do here, that the right thing for the planet, and they are great for the business because consumers see and love it.
Amazing. I mean, I know you use this term that, there are a lot of tech available in the market within supply chain, but what is really changing? What do you think is going to revolutionize supply chain, or it's already doing it?
I think everything that helps us drive agility will be what makes us better. And by agility, it could be being able to quickly change your deployment plans across the network as you see shifting demand in the very short term, so you can quickly adapt your loads to that, all the way to the factories. And that's one that I'm more passionate about, is if you go to many factories, you will see that individuals are still working, not leveraging everything that is available. And the joke that I make with my teams is that we get at home and then you do your banking on your mobile phone. You pay your bills, electric, gas, whatever, on your phone. You speak with your school probably through an app. And then you get inside of a factory and you still have to go through a system to take notes of your whatever was the loss. Then you have to still print something to put on the board so people can see it. So I think that the technology that is today, and I have to compliment here the team at Conagra that is leading the Connected Shop Floor program, is just amazing. There are multiple use cases and a lot of partners helping us do that. We're basically bringing the digitization to the shop floor and allowing, and I know that across the world, many people has done that already, but we are very proud of the work that we are doing here.
That's amazing. I mean, I did few of the events when it comes to IoT, and they're all over the world. So I visited a few of them, and the system and the process looks amazing. It's just that it takes a very long time to implement it. And then actually people really implementing it well, that they're getting so used to it that they can't go without it. And I mean, I've not seen that company really implementing it. So, hopefully one day, maybe if you invite me, I would love to come and see Conagra and how they've done it. And probably record it so many people can learn from it. I think the more digital you go, more sustainable you can become, to be honest. If you know exactly what the output is, what the scrap is, your planning becomes far more better. So yeah, I'm totally all for.
Ruchi, the way I see this is Obviously, today we have much more technology available than 20 years ago. But the challenges today are not different from those of 20 years ago. And I'll just give you a simple example. I remember many years back, we were implementing a new planning tool at my former employer back in Brazil. And the tool was amazing. Compared to what we had, everyone was full of belief that that would be the biggest transformation ever. We will improve stocks, service, all of that. And then we created a team. The team went down there, took the time, as you mentioned, to develop, to make the interfaces that work, to customize, and all that goes into a planning tool implementation. And then when we rolled it out, 6 months later, I was walking by the office and I saw my team still using the old Excel to do planning. And then I spoke with so many people that have gone through the similar journey that's why I say the challenge is not the technology. In those days, that tool looked as good as the ones that we are applying today compared to what we had. It was a step change. We were all excited about it. But I think that most of the times what we miss is bringing people along, is engaging from the beginning. Is showing that the technology is coming to help them perform better and not to teach them how bad they were in the past. And if we are not able to create a change management logic to bring people along the journey, to co-develop solutions, to be engaged in the process of creating the solution, when you implement it, it becomes, you cannot extract as much value as you want. Now we have much more technology coming, just makes that problem even bigger. So even I just gave the example, of our connected shop floor. The biggest unlock was really to have the people on the shop floor to understand that we are doing that for them, not to them. And as soon as people understand it, that what we expect them is them to take the technology and create more value doing better things than filling forms and typing in KPIs. That's the challenge that I saw 20 years ago. That's the challenge that I see today, is how we engage people and how we bring them along so they are part of the change and help us create them than being observers waiting to prove us wrong.
There's one more topic, I think, and this is from our first discussion, was around the manufacturing challenges, US as a whole, and I think it's a lack of talent within manufacturing, not enough people to hire. How are you now solving that?
Yeah, we went through a tough period, I would say some months ago. The peak of the issue was a year ago, that there was not enough people available for hire. We would have 15-20% of open spots into our factories. That was driving a lot of pressure on the ones that were there, running excess overtime, because we had to keep that coming along. We have taken a lot of initiatives in making sure that our sites and our policies and the way we would onboard people make it attractive so people can understand what is the value that they can see in the longer term in working with us. Our HR team worked in the local communities, showing that value proposition for them. It was very successful, and I'm very proud of the work that has been done in that space. So we were able to bring people along. Also implemented some automation that help us also relieve some of that pressure. And today, the way I see it, it's much more stabilized. We see that most of the sites are at a level that's working well. Obviously, there is still something going on here and there, but the big crisis that we had a year and a half ago, that is behind us by a combination of those three things. One is a more stable market, the change that we have made to adapt and be clear on our value proposition, and some automation that has been implemented. That combination, I think, that put us today in a much better position.
It's amazing. And just a follow-up question on the automation side. So if you pick up one of the best sites you have, what percentage of that plant is actually automated?
It's very difficult to have a number there, because automation, it can come from a small part of a line all the way to the way we build it. I can give you the example of logistics, that our plan is in 2 years, more than half of our warehouses should be hugely automated, at least not entirely automated, but all the warehousing part of it, or the storage part of it, fully automated. We are in the process of implementing those sites. They come with a much higher efficiency, with a very good quality in the way we are able to ship. So we continue to invest in the sites. The same, it's difficult to give a precise number there, but what we are doing is taking the places that we have the biggest bottlenecks in terms of efficiency, material handling, the end of line operations, and then we are investing in those places.
Now, so let's now change gears, park Conagra supply chain behind and get a little bit more philosophical. So, 3 questions. One is a quote you remember. I mean, you've already shared a quote from your boss, which is amazing, but is there any other quote which you'd like to share, which always inspires you?
I had a conversation, it's another boss that I had, and I had a conversation with him once, and he said, what do you think that is going to make you successful? And I came up with a response that he said, it's a good response, but I'll just compliment. So the way we talk about that is that, one, there are 5 things that we came up as a conclusion, and that was the quote. That it's not a quote, but it's a thought. One is work hard. It's much easier for people to see your effort than your talent. So let them see your effort first, so with time they see your talent. The second one, you may be smart, but people that came before you were smart as well, and they did their best. So honor their legacy. Use your intellect to build on what you received and not to destroy it. So really have a sharp mind to understand the opportunities, to identify what is positive from what you got, and then take to the next level. The third one is make sure that you bring people along. Make sure that you are a team player. Supply chain is a team game. Make sure that you collaborate, that you are able to integrate everyone around you. The fourth one, be clear on your communication. Make sure that if you speak with a CEO, he gets the message because you use the right language. If you speak to someone at a factory level, you use a different language and make sure that they understand the same content. Do not change the content, just change the form. And the last one, just hire people better than you all the time. Build a team of people that is better than you. That's the best way to deliver value. You learn with them, and that's what I've been trying doing since then.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. It's really, really good. You'll see this quote on my LinkedIn very soon, and of course, I'll give you credit for this, but I'll definitely post it. That's amazing. And a book, if you can recommend 3 books which has really helped you kind of, gain a lot of insight or, kind of changed you or, awaken you in any way.
Yeah. I think this one is going to be a disappointing one. I'll give, because I do not like to read a lot of business books. I read kind of a fictional stuff. Lately, I just reread Animal Farm. I love that book. Yeah, I think it's really, I laugh with it all the time. It's the 3rd time that I read it. The last one I read, I really love it. It's a Brazilian book. It's called The Alienist from Machado de Assis. And it's about a doctor that decided to manage madness, and he started to define what is madness or not. And then, it's just fantastic. It's funny. And the third one, if you in supply chain, there is a famous book, I think it's called The Target, that basically is about managing bottlenecks. This is the basics and fundamentals of the supply chain. Never let dry the bottleneck, and how it goes. It's just amazing.
Your friend Pierluigi is going to be very mad that you did not quote the book he was in, The Source to Sold. By the way, just FYI, I don't know if you have actually read the book, The Source to Sold.
Yeah, that goes without saying. Okay. But if I include this in this podcast, people wouldn't believe anything else that I said.
Of course, I'm just joking. I mean, for people who do not know, Source to Sold is co-written by Radu with Knut, and Radu owns Alcott Global, so technically this podcast is owned by him. So this is why the reference. And the last question, this is really important, is what do you do to keep up with your mental health, and how do you ensure your team's well-being?
That's a difficult one because that's very personal in nature. What I do personally, I try to exercise. I try to keep a discipline of exercising. That's what works for me. But I think what is behind it is that I think we have to be humble, meaning most of the times that I felt extremely pressured and have probably impacted my mental health were those points in which I lost perspective that I couldn't change everything. There is only so much one can do. And most of the times, protecting your time, your personal time, your time with your family, others will find a way to deal with whatever pressure is. If you build a great team, as I just mentioned, that is one of my 5 things on just hire people better than you, they will find theirs. With my team over time, and I think that if they are listening, they will recognize it. I honestly try to protect their time. Every time that I see something that I could send an email 10 at night, I don't. Sometimes I have that tendency to write something on a Sunday, I don't. Just because it's humbling to think of nothing's going to happen between Sunday 9 p.m. and tomorrow 8 a.m. And I will put a concern in someone's mind all the time that they're reading the books to their kids. So I try to protect that as much as I can. Obviously, if there is an emergency and I have to make a call, I will do it. As I said, we have to be close to operations, to supply chains 24/7. But the threshold to, just assume that if you send an email, people will not read it and they can read when they want, or even people that says, I send this email because it's convenient for me, do not feel the pressure to respond it. That's, in my experience, never works. If I get a note from someone on a Sunday, I have to assume that it's important. I will read it, and that gets into my mind. So I think that protecting your personal time and being humble to understand that, there is only so much you can do, but the things that you can do, you do it right. I think that's probably the best way of keeping us in a good health condition.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Any last words for any of our young audience we have? Any suggestions for them?
No, I just want to appreciate the invitation to talk with everyone. I think that anyone that is listening is considering joining the supply chain, I would highly encourage. It's a place that I love being, that I've made a lot of friends along the way. I hope that by sharing this, I have helped some. If I have helped one, I'll be happy already.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For all the show notes and information discussed in the episode, please follow Elcott Global/podcast. Also, if you found this interesting, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or any of the podcast platform. We are looking forward to your feedback. Thank you so much.